Welcome to the M1 Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Sadu, and today we're going to be talking about the psychology of sleep. Quick little disclaimer, guys. In the middle of this podcast, there's a little bit of a beep going on in the background. It's quite faint. I didn't realize it, but my fridge was open. Oops. So in the beginning, it's fine. And then there's a little chunk in the middle where there's a slight bit of beeping, and then it gets back to normal. So I just wanted to let you guys know. Now let's dig in. First off, why do we sleep? I find this to be a fascinating question because the number one priority of our species is to survive or not die and procreate. Now, as far as the not dying part, we are without a doubt in our most vulnerable state while we're asleep because we're literally unconscious and therefore pretty easy to kill, right? So being that we didn't evolve out of sleep or stop doing it altogether means it has to be absolutely crucial for our health and survival itself because it puts us in such a vulnerable situation. I mean, a 90-pound skinny weakling of a human could easily kill a 220-pound muscle-bound beast if they're sleeping by dropping a big rock on their head or something. Kind of graphic, but you get the idea, right? You could almost argue that back in the day, sleep itself kept our behavior in check to a degree. How so? Being that we're so vulnerable while sleeping, you wouldn't want to piss anyone off, treat folks unfairly, or screw them over because everyone's got to fall asleep at some point, and therefore there's a certain amount of trust at play in doing so. I am going to sleep a lot better if I'm on good terms with everyone in my tribe or community because nothing will hinder the sleep process like thinking someone's going to off you that night. So evolution itself proves that sleep is vital for the body and the brain to repair and replenish itself. It can't be replaced. And then also it may have a potential side benefit of keeping us in check from a behavior standpoint because everyone's got to sleep at some point and therefore a certain degree of trust needs to be present. And that trust is built via treating your tribe mates well and fairly. Contribution is likely a piece of the puzzle here as well. However, if you were a good person but not contributing sufficiently, you'd probably just get excommunicated from the tribe, not killed. Little side tangent there, but either way. Now, what is sleep and how is it structured? It's separated into two major chunks. So we've got non-rapid eye movement sleep or non-REM, and we've got rapid eye movement sleep or REM. So non-REM and REM are the acronyms. Non-REM sleep has 4 stages and they're super easy to remember because they're just called stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. So stage 1 is sort of a balance between being awake and being in light sleep. Stage 2 is full-on light sleep. And then stage 3 and 4 are now actually considered the same stage or combined, and that is called deep sleep. Now, stage 1 and 2 ramp things down, okay? So heart rate drops, temperature drops, and brain activity slows down. Then we move into stages 3 and 4. Our brainwave activity ramps up. The body begins to recharge the immune system. This is when memories are consolidated, which is basically just a fancy way of saying taking things from your short-term memory and depositing them into the long-term memory so that you can access them when need be. So a whole bunch of cool stuff happens in those 4 stages of non-REM sleep. The body is incredible. Now, how about REM? REM sleep is when we do the vast majority of our dreaming. We seem to get a big boost in creativity, which I'm sure no one would argue with because some dreams are straight up loco. But why do we dream? This is another super interesting question. Now, folks like Matthew Walker, who's a sleep expert, would say it's a form of emotional first aid. Other folks would say the subconscious reveals itself and gives us hints as to what's going on in our lives and what needs to be resolved. Personally, I think dreams are incredibly valuable information because we dream in pictures. We see pictures and we feel feelings. So I think the pictures, or you could think about them like metaphors, are showing us things that we need to see in order for us to help resolve them in our waking hours. So I guess my view on dreams is sort of a combo between the emotional first aid piece and the subconscious piece revealing itself and giving us opportunities to resolve whatever issues are at play in our lives at any given point in time. Now, why we dream could be an entire podcast in itself, so I'll leave it there. But these non-REM and REM stages of sleep cycle through about every 90 minutes or so. So we go from non-REM stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 to REM, and then they cycle back through from stage 1 again. So this is sleep architecture in a nutshell. Now, the only kicker is that the ratio of non-REM sleep to REM sleep changes throughout the night. So we get more non-REM in the first half of the night and more REM in the second half of the night. This is why we do a lot more dreaming closer to morning time. And that's also cool in the sense that it makes it easier for us to remember our dreams because of recency. What this also means is that if you need 8 hours of sleep but you only get 6, you missed out on a larger percentage of your REM sleep than you did non-REM or deep sleep. So that's something to be aware of because it's a great case for being sure that you get all the sleep you need so you go through all the necessary stages. But that begs the question, how much sleep do we need? The answer is 7 to 9 hours. However, if you're in a situation of sleep debt, meaning you haven't been getting enough sleep lately, you're going to have to play catch up. So if you normally need 8 hours to feel rested and alert all day, you might need 9 hours for a week straight in order to get back to baseline as an example. Sleep needs also can change depending on a ton of factors: how hard you're working out, how hard you're working mentally throughout the day, alcohol intake, caffeine, emotional strain, all of these things factor in. Lack of sleep quality will also increase the need for sleep duration, right? Because a solid 8 hours might leave you feeling the same as a broken or fragmented 10 hours. So quality is super important as well. Also, just because you want to maximize your time. If you can get the job done right in 8 hours as opposed to 10, that's a huge win because that's an extra 2 hours that you can spend with friends or family or doing whatever you want to do. As far as when you get your sleep, this brings up the concept of chronotype. So classically, we've got morning larks and night owls. And the truth is about 25 to 30% of folks fall into the morning lark category, 25 to 30% fall into the night owl category, and everyone else lands somewhere in between. Now, naturally, when we're babies and kids, we go to bed earlier and wake up earlier. Then as we move into our teenage years, our sleep rhythm is pushed back or later. So we're closer to the night owl end of things. And then as we move into adulthood, our rhythm moves forward again, meaning we go to bed earlier and wake up earlier. Now, these shifts are going to be relative based on what your tendency is. So a quote unquote natural bedtime for a morning person in their teens might be 11 p.m. or midnight. But for a natural night owl, it might be 1 or 2 a.m. So it's a relative change based off of what your tendency is. One thing to be aware of for everyone, whether you fall into the morning lark category, you're a night owl, or somewhere in between, is that electricity can manipulate your rhythm. You can take a morning person and turn them into a supposed night owl via electricity because of lighting in our homes, video games, computers, television shows. We can now entertain ourselves at literally any time we want. So the question becomes, what is your actual type? Let's say you think you're a night owl and you're going to bed at 2 in the morning every night. What time would you naturally fall asleep or wind down if you didn't have access to electricity? Going camping is a classic example of this. What time do you start getting tired or fall asleep when you're camping out in the woods? I highly doubt without electricity that it's 2 a.m. in the morning because there's just nothing to do unless you're drinking. But yeah, so a tried and true way to find out where your tendency really lies is by limiting access to electronics and then seeing when you go to bed and when you wake up. Personally, I think there are smaller differences between morning larks and night owls than our current situation leads on, just because of access to electricity and technology. So we've laid the foundation. How do we get a great night's sleep? I'm going to break this down into physical, mental, and emotional categories. So first up, we'll address the physical. Get outside for at least 30 minutes every day as early in the day as possible. The reason we want to do this is that the most important input for the circadian rhythm or body clock is light entering your eyes. So you want to get outside as early as possible in order for natural light to enter your eyes. And that light lets your body know what time of day it is. So in the case of morning, that light will let your body know, hey, be up, be alert, it's daytime. This is really cool because we actually have structures in our eyes that aren't involved in sight directly. Their job is to detect and then communicate that light information to something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN for short, because that word is ridiculous. And the SCN turns out to be our master body clock. Now, the SCN is also why we want to limit bright light exposure at night, because you don't want to tell your SCN at 11 p.m. via artificial light that it's daytime, right? Because that will send the signals to your body saying, hey, be up, be alert, it's daytime. That will mess with your body clock big time. And this is the point that I was making around electricity pushing someone's bedtime back artificially. Next up on the physical front, be sure to get adequate movement. So 10,000 steps daily and you're done. Workouts on top of that are great, but they're not required. They're a bonus. And just keep in mind that workouts don't replace steps. So your 10K steps are a must whether you go to the gym or not. You also want to set your sleep environment on the cooler end of things versus the hotter end, because it turns out it's much easier for us humans to fall asleep with a cooler setup rather than a hotter one. Also be sure to eat no closer than 2 to 3 hours before bed, because digestion causes the body to heat up, and therefore eating too close to bed, especially if it's a large portion of calories, will impair your sleep. It's also worth mentioning if you're experiencing the night sweats, it's for one of these two reasons or both. So get your room temperature under control and eat your last meal earlier rather than later. Moving on to the mental and emotional aspects of sleep. Taxing your brain via mental stimulation, learning, problem solving, etc. is an awesome way to improve your sleep, because like the body, the brain likes to be exercised. I'm sure you've had the experience of going to a workshop or a weekend conference and sleeping like an absolute baby at night. This is because learning is tiring. And also, like we talked about before, we ingrain memories while we sleep. So sleep itself is crucial to the learning process as a whole. From an emotional angle, one of the most important aspects of getting great sleep is a concept that I call completing. So let's say you have a little tiff with a friend earlier in the day and you hadn't thought about it much until you jumped into bed, and then all the thoughts, worries, second guessing, replaying is just circling around in your head. Why now? It's likely because this is the first time of the day where you had a quiet moment to yourself, and therefore it's the first opportunity that you've provided yourself with in order for reflection on previous situations that happened in your day. Now, I mentioned a similar phenomenon earlier around sleep keeping us humble and on good terms with folks in our lives, and there's a reason why we fixate on issues we have with other folks. We fixate on issues because we are social creatures. We depend on other people for survival, and being that we're social and rely on others, it means that our relationship with these people can potentially mean life or death in the worst case scenario. If you were in a tribe back in the day and you pissed off one too many people in your group, and the group got together and decided, you know what, Marcus is more of a liability than he is an asset, and we've only got so many resources to go around, I think we're actually better off without him. Excommunication from your group was almost certainly a death sentence. This also ties in with why feelings of being left out of a friend, family, or group situation feels so shitty. We associate being excluded with dying in an evolutionary sense. This is why people stay in groups that no longer serve them in other aspects of their lives, whether it be religion, an AA group, or just a specific group of friends. We are evolutionarily wired to care what other people think, because evolution's priority number one is survival and number two, procreation, right? And if we're not hyper aware of what other folks' impressions are of us, what they think of us, whether they like us or not, whether we feel like we fit in, all of these social dynamics are crucial to survival. So that was a long-winded way of saying complete your situations throughout the day. Communicate clearly with the folks that you may have had issues with, or folks that seem to have or had an issue with you. Clear the air. If you were unsure about what someone meant by a specific comment, if you thought you might have offended someone and you're second guessing yourself, just address it with them as soon as possible. This is the idea of completing situations. And essentially what it is taking the ambiguity out of your life, because given our social evolutionary wiring, walking around second guessing and unsure about all sorts of things in your life is like mental and emotional torture. And I'm sure you can identify with that. I know I can. Clear communication is the remedy. Having said that, if it's 10 p.m. and you can't talk to that person that you want to talk to, just write down your thoughts or even write down in your calendar a time to call that person or see them the next day in order to clear the air. This way, you avoid spinning and worrying about the same ideas or thoughts over and over because you know it's written down and accounted for. This is also a reason to take, say, 5 minutes, maybe once or twice a day, to just check in with yourself and ponder, like, do I have any situations to complete? Is there a low level of angst or worry that I need to address right now? Then I can be calm, cool, and collected and move forward. The obvious downside of waiting for this check-in or slowdown until you go to bed is that that's when you're meant to be sleeping, and missing out on sleep is only going to have you handle that situation in a less effective way the following day, because lack of sleep itself impairs our decision-making ability, our ability to be logical and rational, emotional stability, not exactly conducive stuff to being an optimally functioning adult. You can also use a to-do list and a to-worry list. And I learned this from Dr. Kirk Parsley, who's been on the show. Kirk is a former Navy SEAL turned sleep expert, and he talks about jotting down your to-do list with everything you've got to get done the following day. So it's down on paper, it's accounted for, and then also potentially a to-worry list because it uses the same concept around accounting for things. It's just that it's applied to worry. Now, you can even write down in your calendar to worry between 3 and 3:15 p.m. because you wouldn't want to forget to worry, right? Now, simply accounting for things and getting them out of your brain is so valuable because otherwise it's just left spinning around up in there over and over versus addressing it once and then knowing you're going to be the best equipped to handle everything on that list after a great night's sleep. Alcohol and caffeine. So alcohol is a sedative, so it will likely have you fall asleep faster or more accurately lose consciousness faster. However, it does disrupt sleep architecture like we chatted about before, and it fragments your sleep. So you don't sleep as deep and you get more frequent wake-ups throughout the night. I personally notice a difference in my sleep quality after a single drink now. It's kind of depressing, but it is what it is. Now, the earlier you can start drinking and stop, the less it will impact your sleep because your body will have more time to process the alcohol before hitting the hay. So if you're going to drink, start early and finish early, you'll also just be far less hungover the next day. On the caffeine front, there is a massive difference between individuals when it comes to caffeine clearance rates. But as a general rule, I like folks to keep their caffeine consumption to before noon because the caffeine-sleep relationship can snowball out of control really quickly. So for example, you get a poor night's sleep, you add an extra cup of coffee in the afternoon, then you have another poor night's sleep because of the added caffeine, and then all of a sudden it's 3 weeks later and you're still sleeping like shit. Your poor sleep then spills over into your eating habits, movement practice, emotional well-being, relationships, all of it, right? Not a good look. So again, as a general rule, I'd recommend consuming your caffeine pre-noon. Naps. I think naps are great if for some reason your life or work schedule is set up in a way that you can't get all of the sleep that you need in one chunk at night. But if you find that naps impair your ability to sleep at night, and they push your bedtime back, probably not the best idea. Having said that, naps do not need to be an hour or too long. They can be 15 to 30 minutes, and you don't even have to fall asleep. You can just close your eyes, no pressure, simply relax. And building off of the caffeine point, a little 15 to 20 minute nap where you just rest your eyes is equally as effective as an afternoon cup of coffee. Alrighty, that was a fair bit of information there. So I want to sum things up for you succinctly with 10 take-home points. So number one, get outside for 30 minutes as early in the day as possible to set your body clock. You also might as well walk during this time, but you could also just drink your coffee or eat your breakfast on your patio or deck. If you don't have access to a place like a patio or a deck, just sit in front of a nice bright window. Number two is to exercise your body via getting 10,000 steps in per day. Number three, exercise your brain as well. So if your work is challenging in any way, which I'm sure it is, this will cover your bases. But if you're not feeling fully stimulated via work, then maybe pick a book up on a subject you're interested in, or hey, listen to this podcast or another one like it that interests you. Learning has us feel accomplished, and a feeling of an accomplished filled day is great for quality sleep. Number 4, eat well, of course, right? I'm the nutrition guy. Quality nutrition is going to keep your body weight in check, which is a very important aspect of getting good sleep because elevated body weights impair sleep itself, hence CPAP machines for folks with sleep apnea. Eating well will also keep your blood sugar in check, which equates to fewer wake-ups throughout the night. Wins all around. Number 5, limit alcohol consumption across the board, and if you are going to do it early. Number 6, keep your caffeine intake to pre-lunch. Number 7, complete your daily situations via clear communication. 8, maximize light exposure early in the day and minimize stimulation and bright light exposure at night. So dimmer switches are amazing for this because as the sun starts to go down, you can dim your lighting environment, maybe even set the mood, if you know what I'm saying. Number 9, put together a to-do and a to-worry list if you need it. And number 10, shut down all electronics at least 30 minutes pre-bed. An hour is better. Put your phone on airplane mode. Keep it in a different room if you find it hard not to look at. Your bedroom is for 2 things, sleep and sex. I would highly recommend not having a television in your room either and making it a phone-free zone across the board. I would be shocked if these 2 things alone didn't drastically increase the quality of your sleep. Fairly simple stuff, right? If your body is a machine, all we're doing is working with and around its limitations, or essentially playing by its rules and providing it with what it needs in order to thrive. That's it. Now, if you know someone that's struggling with their sleep, send this episode to them because understanding how the body works in an evolutionary sense and then working with the system is such a powerful way to set yourself up for success. If you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout programming with me, you can click the link in the show notes below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. Friend me up on the socials at n1fitness on Instagram and Marcus Sadu on Facebook. Thanks so much for listening, and I will catch you on the next episode. See ya.